Howdy folks, it's Harrison with Mainely Acres, and for today's question and answers video series, I'm going to answer the good old question of what can this machine handle. So I have a couple different pieces of material up here. I have a piece of medium grade leather. It's about 4 to 5 ounce piece of leather used for today's demonstration. Also, as promised, I have a tread of a tire that I've prepped, and I'm going to use the sewing machine to sew, like I'm going to be adding a sole to something. Also, as promised, the sidewall of a tire. So let's get started, and with the first demonstration I'm going to use this bit of leather here, and what I'm going to do is to fold this leather one time, sew it, then fold it again, and so forth and so on, just to show you how many layers of leather this machine can handle. So let's dive right on into it. For the first fold, it's just going to be 2 pieces of leather, and let's put it underneath here. Drop the presser foot down, and we're just going to do 1 line of stitching there just to see if it can handle it. Let's pull out our piece of leather and see what happened. As you guys can see, it did a really nice line of stitching there. Also here on the back. Now, if you ever are sewing with your machine and you have slop here on the back and you're stitching, you want to adjust the tensioning up top, and if the slop is on the top of your project, you want to adjust the tensioning down below in your bobbin. So we'll go ahead and fold this over one more time. So that's going to be 3 layers of leather that we're going to sew through on this next go around. So let's see what happened with this. Alrighty, another nice row of stitching here on the top. And you can see that went through 3 pieces of leather there. Nice on the back. Now there is a little bit of slop here where it didn't pull that loop all the way in between the 2 pieces of leather. So at this point you could actually do like a half turn on your tensioning plates on each one of these, and that will take care of that problem there. So let's fold it over one more time and see if we can get away with that, or we're going to have to adjust the tensioning there. So we'll fold it over again. Now this is going to be going through 4 pieces of leather here. Alrighty, the top line of stitching here is the upper one, and that looks really clean. You can see it's starting to pull down into the leather now that we're starting to build up the layers. And on the back it looks fairly neat, except there's just a little bit of slop there on that last one. So let's go ahead and give a half turn on the tensioning and see if that doesn't clear this up on this next layer that we do. So we'll do a half turn there and a half turn on the bottom. We'll fold this over again. And now we got it folded over. We're going to be sewing through 5 layers of leather on this next stitching here. And look at that. That cleaned up the back real nice. You guys see how I adjusted those screws in just by half a turn on each one? There's absolutely no slop there in the back. And here in the front, really nice. Now you can see that it's getting really, the stitching here is getting really tight going in there, but that's expected when you're sewing through the thicker stuff. I do have my presser foot tensioning backed off all the way, because I know when I'm sewing thicker pieces that's important. If you have this adjusted down real tight, you'll have all sorts of problems. So if you guys are sewing thicker pieces of leather like this, I would definitely loosen this nut underneath as much as you can without dropping it for sewing these kinds of projects. So I think we'll be able to get one more fold, and that is going to be 6 pieces of leather. So let's give it a try and see what happens. But I am real interested to see how that turned out. Yeah, I did have to, I had some problems in the beginning, which you're going to clearly see here on the back. You can see that little bit of mess there. That's because it kept going into the same hole and it wasn't advancing, and so that's why I had to do it by hand. But you guys can see it's really tight in there. Let's get a quick little measurement of that and see how thick that is. That's at least a good 1/4 inch thick when all said and done and sewn together. So that's pretty amazing in my opinion. So let's move on to sewing some different stuff. Now when I start sewing with these, which I'm going to start sewing next, I find that it's real helpful to go ahead and either have a waxed thread, or if you have like this coated thread, go ahead and wax that as well. Because I have attempted in sewing with this before, and I find that just waxing this bit of thread here helps it go along so much smoother. So I'm going to go ahead and unthread my machine. I'm going to wax a bit of this thread on the top and show you how the machine will handle this piece of rubber here. Alrighty, so I've waxed my thread and I'm ready to get into the next sample project here. So as you guys can see, this is the side wall of the tire. Just that scrap piece of leather here, and it's just going to be 1 ply. You know, if you were to want to put a piece of leather on the bottom of this, so that way when you put your foot down in there, it's not contacting the rubber. So it's going to kind of mimic sewing on a thin sole, or thinner than what we have here on the table. But you guys can see it's still pretty thick. And I believe the thickest part is here in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of leather here, put it down, and I'm going to do a line of stitching right down here on the middle and catch that thickest part of the tire there. Alrighty, so this is the back side of the project there. You guys can see really nice uniform there, and the same thing here on the inside. You can see that it attached the two pieces together here. Alrighty, for the final demonstration, I'm going to act like this was a heel of a boot or a shoe that needs to be reattached to either a leather upper or just a leather insole put on it. So what I've done, just to save some time, this isn't really the proper way of how you would do this if you were putting the leather piece on. But what I've done temporarily is just take some double-sided tape and put a square around there to help hold the leather in place while I'm sewing. But normally you would put some type of a rubber cement, and you would put it on this side here and on the other side, let it get tacky, and combine them together. But for the sake of time and demonstration, I'm just going to use this double-sided tape stuff that you can get from Tandy. So I've put that on the piece of rubber there. I'm going to line up my piece of leather to where it fully covers that piece there. And I'll go ahead and place it into place with my hand. Alrighty, so I have the piece of leather trimmed to size to match this heel that we're going to be putting together here. And this is just to give you a demonstration, guys. So we'll go ahead and get started and see what this machine can do. This is the best part of the project time, right? See what the stitching did. Alrighty, I think that came out pretty good. You guys will see that the stitching here looks like it's further apart than around here, around the edge, and then it gets back to the even spacing on this side. and that's because this part of the rubber was a lot thicker than the sides. I just recently corrected this because you see in the previous video when I showed this sample there's a little bit more tread on the top here, but it didn't allow me enough space to line up my thread where I needed to, so I came back and trimmed it off some more, and I really didn't work it with the flat file to kind of smoothen it up, but still all the same I think it did a pretty good job. You can barely see the stitching on this side, and it's secure, it's on there, it's not going anywhere. So I thought that was really cool. Now I didn't sew along the bottom of here, but I did put some double-sided tape, so I'll just go ahead and remove that bit of double-sided tape because I don't need it there anymore, and I'll just put my fingers in there and show you guys it's pretty secure. Now I did back stitch on both sides there, so pulling this apart like such is no problem. Now that I've done this and I've proved to myself that I can, this machine can work with stuff like this, I'm actually going to be making some sandals using these same tires. So give me a little bit of time. I got a few things going on the homestead, but I will get a couple of these treads cut out to the size of my feet, and I'm going to try making some sandals out of it now that I see it can be done. So hopefully this has helped you guys, encourage you guys to be able to do new projects with your machine, or if you don't have one of these, to go ahead and go out and buy one, because they're fairly inexpensive. I believe they're anywhere between the $250 to $300 range, which is awesome for a machine that can do all of this. As you guys seen, it's sewed through the sole of this and a piece of leather just fine. Also here with the outside wall. Now this was a thinner piece of rubber, and then this was the thicker piece, of course, but I just wanted to show you that it can be done. Hit that like button down below, and if you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and always spend time with that family.